Welcome to Podula Rasa. I'm David Blank.
And I'm Jim Esch.
This is a podcast about finding something in nothing. In today's episode of Podula Rasa, we revisit the old Joe days of Jim and Jim and discuss one of the more controversial aspects of this band. So Jim, take it away.
Thanks, Jim, for rejoining us. Jim Morris is here. We're going to talk about a song that I wrote for our tape Joe 2 back in the day. The song is called Locusts in October, and this being Halloween, we wanted to squeeze this in before the end of the month. And if I can edit this down, we'll put it up tonight, just in time for trick-or-treating. The song also has some interesting tie-ins to Thom Williams. So those of you Thom Williams fans out there, we have stories to tell about that. We've told some of this before on previous podcasts, but now we're going to tell the full untold story, more to share. Yeah. So who was Joe? Joe was me and Jim, and we started collaborating on music. I guess we were starting to play music before we got together with Dave for the brief Zeus and the Druids thing, but it was not long before that all started, wasn't it?
Well, the original Joe jam session, you might call it, was probably in the band room when I was a senior, and you had the sheet music the Saturday in the Park, and we would just play that over. Well, you would play it on the piano, and I don't know what I was doing. I guess I was playing a drum or something.
I think you were playing vibes.
Vibes, right? That could be. We had access to every instrument in the studio, just like the Beatles or something.
Where did the name Joe come from?
That was Jim's idea.
Yeah, and it was pretty. I used to call everything Joe. Like I wrote a piece of music for band for the bleacher music, and I called it Joe 1. And it was, it was the same question. Why'd you call it Joe 1? I just thought it was I thought it was unpretentious, but in fact, it was probably as pretentious as you can get. I don't know. It's it doesn't have any pretense, it's just Joe. It's just normal. It's just average, or it's just not, We started getting together because we were, jamming in band and stuff like that. And so when I graduated in summer of 81, we said, oh, let's still get together and play. And so that was a year we would do that. And so by 1982, we had started to come up with some songs and I think this was, and then Zeus and the Druids came when you were a senior. So the next
spring of 82.
Yeah. So that was before we did our first tape, although it's sometime around that same time we did the original tape was like a double tape. It was a 90-minute tape. And it had everything we had thought of up until then. It was called 10 Seconds Bigger. It had all kinds of crazy stuff on it. It had I Want to Go to the Bathroom, and had had the original I Hate Your Guts, and a lot of other songs that became strangely popular amongst a few people.
We had this sort of strange mix of styles where some of the songs were very jokey and punk based. So it was actually a lot like the Violent Femmes, even though I hadn't ever heard of the Violent Femmes, but they were doing the same thing around the same time. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Sort of folk punk kind of stuff. And then some more edgy, electric guitar based and drums punk. But then there was Jim had this ballad side to him, and then we were attempting to do progressive rock epics with two instruments and pianos and drums, or guitar and drums, piano. So it was all over the place, but it was a lot of fun to make that music.
Yeah.
I think it was after I started taking Thom Williams' creative writing class, which Dave, I'm pretty sure you were in that class with me.
I think so. Yeah.
And which is probably how we became closer friends. I just started writing up a storm. I was so inspired by him and by that class. And then I started writing a lot of lyrics. And then Joe 1 that long tape got reduced to something shorter, right?
Right.
A 60-minute.
A little, yeah. So we cut it down and rehearsed it more. but almost all of it was re-recorded. Yeah, using my fancy two cassette recording method, where I'd bounce tracks between two cassettes. I'd go borrow my friend's cassette, and we'd record. I don't even remember how we did it. I'd have to think through it. Recorded in mono on one recorder. Then we'd bounce that to the other cassette recorder while recording to one channel of the other recorder while recording the right-hand channel, with new stuff. So it's usually the drums and piano on the first track, and then we'd record the vocals and guitars or something on the second one. And then it was in the totally split stereo, like an early Beatles album or something. And then I didn't like that sound, and it didn't sound good if you were trying to play it on a stereo and stuff. So then I mixed it back to mono.
You folded it down to mono.
Right. I mixed everything back to mono. And then when I made copies of it to give to people, I would split the one track into two. And do a little bit of mastering, turn it up when it got loud, or not make sure it didn't distort stuff. Yeah, it was quite a process.
So after we did that Joe 1 tape, and after I graduated high school, Jim and I kept playing and recording. And by this time I was in college at Westchester. And I guess I'm trying to remember. So this song Locusts in October that we're going to talk about, that came out on what was known as Joe 2. And I forget what year that came out. Was it 84?
It must have been 84, because I think Joe 1, that cleaned up version of Joe 1 came out in January of 83. I remember it very clearly because I was graduating from RETS, the Electronic Technical School, at the same time. And instead of studying for my final, I was making copies of Joe 1 to give to friends. I think I made 8 copies. Then we were really kind of getting pretty good at playing together. So we were more rehearsed, and so that's why Joe 2 came out about a little bit, I think the spring of the next year. And that was the one that had all the prog epics and Steely Danish chords and stuff like that.
So we did these tapes, and then we did a third tape, Joe 3. And then we sort of went our separate ways, and we're living in different places and stuff. But down the line, this was probably late 90s. I uploaded all the Joe material to mp3.com. And at that time you could make CDs out of that. It was sort of like an archival project. And then that was when the web was starting up and everything. So I made some web pages for Joe. So I wrote this article we were sort of inventing a band history for ourselves, just for fun. And I thought it would be fun to read this one article about this particular song because it caused some controversy.
Flashback to the 80s. I'm in my bedroom writing the destined to be classic soft rock hit Locusts in October, scribbling the words furiously onto graph paper. Flash forward a few days later. I work out the melody and chord changes on the dining room Kimball piano. Flash forward a few weeks later. I demo the song for Jim, who declares it worthy for our band Joe. Jump cut to an alternate universe where Lionel Richie is brushing his teeth in an oversized bathroom at a beach house on Oahu. He feels a presence in the film-like substance collecting at the base of his rinse glass. He focuses on the trickling tap water while staring into the bottom of the glass. The smell makes him think of a basement. Jump cut to the official Joe 2 tape release party, which consisted of me and Jim driving around Broomall in his car with the windows up, cranking Joe 2 through the car stereo. Locusts in October flows from the speakers like a freshwater spring. Someone must be told about this destined-to-be-hit song. Dissolve to the apartment of Thom Williams, our high school creative writing teacher, who has been chosen to be one of the privileged few to hear Joe 2 in its entirety. Thom stares at the pyramid floating above his bed whilst listening to Locusts in October. The Fostex 4-track machine beckons him. Flash forward a couple weeks. Thom plays his demo of Locusts in October for us. He has given it a pop groove with drum machine rhythm and layered harmonies. Envisioning drunks swaying, then bowing their heads into the froth of their beer mugs while this song blasts from the jukebox, Williams declares, with the authority of someone who personally knew John Butcher Axis, that this song could be a hit. Jump cut to the grand piano at Lionel Richie's Hawaiian retreat. The bathroom rinse glass rests on the side table for inspiration. A snippet of melody enters his ear, and a simple stretch of changes. Not bad, he muses. I can use this. Fast forward many months later, Jim and Jim are in the basement devouring hours of MTV. J.J. Jackson introduces the newest Lionel Richie single. Jim and Jim turn from the TV to face one another. The Celentano pizza cheese is dripping from their lower lips. Say you, say me, da 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 da, na na na. That's the verse, melody, and chord changes to Locusts in October, screams Jim. He ripped off my song, says the other Jim. I need a lawyer, like that guy who sued Billy Joel over my life. The video fades to the MTV astronaut. Jim and Jim finish their pizzas in silence. The question remains. How could Lionel Richie have lifted our melody, made a few subtle changes, added a bridge, and made it into a huge hit? The answer may never be known. Go ahead. Pooh-pooh the conspiracy theories, the secret demo tapes, the stories of parallel universes. The fact remains, matter and antimatter do exist, just like Say You, Say Me, and Locusts in October. Just like Occam's razor, you can only slice so much before you rip your face off with all your circuitous reasonings. Strange coincidence? A twist of fate? One more freakish 1980s cultural convergence? You decide.
This is the article I wrote for the website that got me into a little bit of hot water. It's the title of the article is How Lionel Richie Ripped Off Our Melody. I put that on the website, and then some weeks or months later, I get an email from the president of the Lionel Richie fan club, who was furious with me, saying, how dare you accuse Lionel Richie of plagiarism? And basically sending me a cease and desist letter, take this off the website. And I wrote back and said something like, do you have no sense of humor? It's like pretty obvious that this is a complete joke.
Yeah.
But I just told this person to go away.
But it's kind of like we didn't want to get sued by the, Lionel Richie lawyers. Yeah. 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 But it was during that 1984 period where we were doing a lot of rehearsing. You were in college. I was doing nothing because I got out of school with a technical degree. And
This
I
was
called
the lame duck period.
yeah, I called it my lame duck period, which I think is not doing it, justice, because it actually was. I wasn't working. Didn't have a job. Yeah, I don't know. It was it's probably the most productive period of music, in my life practically, because that's all I was doing. So it was, but yeah, but that's when we kind of hooked up with Thom Williams. We started like talking to him a lot about, music, and we'd go visit him after school was out. I guess you were in college, and then we'd go meet him in his classroom.
We did?
And yeah, we did that a couple times. He'd see us coming and say, "Hey, it's Joe."
I have no memory of this. I'm just furious at myself that I don't remember that.
Yeah, maybe I went there once. Maybe I swear we went there together once, and just saw him and talked to him about it. And he never heard Joe 1, I don't think.
Did we give Dave any of that material? Dave, you never heard our stuff?
No,
I think
no.
the Susan and Drill was before we made our very first tape, so there was not much to share in 80.
Okay. And then you were off in college by that point too, probably.
Right.
And you came back from college once, and we recorded that new version of Mythical Jam, which
I recognize my playing on it, but I have no memory of doing it. So yeah. So it was truly mythical for me.
But
I remember we would just imagine all the parts that Dave could put on these songs, like if he were there, like, oh, his guitar would sound great on this part, like solo or whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But I guess it was 84 when Joe 2 came out, and that's when we gave Thom Williams a copy of it. So at that point, I was in Westchester. I was going to Westchester as well. So we were both in college. And Thom Williams lived off campus. So we said, hey, we got this new tape. We got to give it to Thom Williams because he's like connected. Because we knew that he had connections to the music industry. Like, didn't he write music for John Butcher Axis or something like that?
He was connected to them somehow.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly what the story was, but he had mentioned that he knew him and he played with him and they were friends, and somehow Rush was involved too.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
No.
I think John Butcher Axis opened for Rush, and I think my memory is that Thom played on stage with them somehow. Huh. And I remember saying to him, why are you doing this? Why don't you go do that?
Right.
He's like, well, this is where my life is, or something like that. And I've actually written to John Butcher a couple of times, and he doesn't write back. So I don't know. Maybe he didn't remember it either. But
yeah,
I think Tom's referred to on the liner notes of one of John Butcher Axis's album, because it's like something to TW.
But we knew he had an agent. I mean, he had some type of songwriting agent. I think.
Yeah.
Maybe we saw him. Because I remember him telling us all that, and then we gave him the tape, and that's where the story kind of begins with Thom Williams and Joe, because it was just great feedback that he gave. He really took it seriously, he just put it aside. He listened to every single song, and gave us notes on every single song. It was a set of 5x7 cards, like with all his notes on it. And I don't know where those are. I was looking for them this morning, and I couldn't find them. But they were classic, and not all positive. It too. It's like because we had our required joke songs, like going to church and praying a lot. And
that didn't get money bags, huh?
That didn't get money bags. He said, given valuable. I think it was given valuable. What why would you waste valuable tape on this?
Yeah.
But those were our most popular songs. They got played on WKDU, and
there was a pair of songs that were offset, like going to church and praying a lot was the companion piece to Drinking Beer and Talking About Sex, which was much more popular than going to church and praying a lot. But it was essentially the same song, like the going to church, like Drinking Beer and Talking About Sex was in a major key, and then I just changed all the minor chords for going to church.
I had this little toy organ in the basement,
and like a Gregorian chant intro. Yeah.
Church, going, my friends are going to church and we're having fun. Going to church, praying a lot, praying a lot. Me and my friends are praying a lot and we're having fun. Praying a lot.
So he I think he appreciated it, but he was, he was looking for songs that had, so the idea was that like Thom, he gave Locusts in October to his agent. His agent, does whatever agents do with songs like that. And somehow it ended up Lionel Richie hearing it, and it could be true.
Did you ever talk to Thom about it?
No, why not? It's like, that is the hook. I mean, those four notes and those chords, of course, the chords are like Let It Be chords. I mean, chords aren't, rock and roll chords are, always practically the same, especially a four to the bar ballad, using those types of chords. But the melody is very distinct, and the thing that it's more frustrating than anything maybe is that I think your song is so much better than Say You, Say Me. Say You, Say Me is I love Lionel Richie. I think he's written some incredible songs, but that song I think he could have written anything at that point in his career and it would have been a hit. And that was from White Nights or something, and then he puts that dumb break in the middle of it. Like, what is that? It's like, it's a different tempo. And I remember seeing him talk about that song and saying, it was kind of like the Beatles, man. I like changed tempo in the middle and stuff. Lionel, you're great, but
of course we can't include his version of the song on here because we'll get sued.
You will get sued.
Right.
Brian Eno's lawyers will call Lionel Richie's lawyers.
We'll be done.
We'll be done. That's right. And so, but just if the lawyers, if you're listening, we're only joking. We don't really think Lionel Richie stole this song. Like, it's only a joke. It's just a strange coincidence.
One thing led to another way back when. Tired voices in the streets, makeshift ties and modern pleats. Something about the way you ran
But there's a little more inside story to this that might be interesting, or not. So the title "Locusts in October," I was trying to remember where that came from, and I'm pretty sure I noticed something going on in October. I actually saw locust shells in October. So at the time I was writing the song, fall of '82 or fall of '83, I just noticed all these cicada exoskeletons on the trees, and it seemed really out of place that they would be there that late in the season. Usually you see them in the summer, right? But here it was fall, and I'm seeing these shells all over the place. And then later, like just last year, I got this email from Jessica Goodfellow, who used to live next door to Thom Williams in Newtown Square. And I wanted to quote from her email because this just immediately struck me as an interesting coincidence. And she said, there was a tree between our houses. This is her talking. There was a tree between our houses, her and Tom's house, that locusts would always leave their exoskeletons on. And for some reason, as a kid, that fascinated me. So I would always pick them off and save them in a box. Tom told me he used to always hang out at the tree and look at the locust shells too. And he'd tell me when there were new ones for me to go pick. He'd always tell me to carry on when he'd see me doing weird kid stuff. So it was kind of weird.
Yeah, it really is.
Read the next paragraph where she talks about the tape.
Maybe the title resonated with Tom when he listened to our tape. Like, oh yeah, Locusts in October. I get it.
Right. Because he didn't change the title.
So the song is like it's just kind of obvious song, but the chorus is interesting. And Jim, I don't even know if you know those, but this "goodbye, good luck, stop, pack, and see me sometime. So glad we got to be friends." That's a direct quote from the girl in question, who's the subject of this song. This is what she wrote in my yearbook, among a few other things. And Dave, this appears on the same page that your yearbook signature appears.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Are you still in touch with her?
No.
It's such a great line. It's a found poem.
I think there's a Richard Thompson song that uses that refrain too. Goodbye, good luck. Anyway, and then I had to fill it out like with the unstated thing. It all had to end.
Which, I'm sorry, is just genius. This is brilliant songwriting. I love it.
And that was also original, but still influenced in a way by Steely Dan, I thought.
How so? That's
when
interesting tie-in.
Just the chord changes.
Yeah, that's probably my chord changes that I added to the minor sevens and the major sevens that I threw in.
When I first heard it, I could hear Donald Fagen singing it.
Like Dr. Wu or something.
It was inspired. Yeah, exactly.
I think when I first presented this song, I was playing it on piano and Jim was playing the drums, and he came up with this great drum fill. That first drum fill, he wrote that fill, which I always tried to play, but I could never play it as well as Jim played it.
Yeah, that original recording of it that we did in the key of A with me on drums, it starts with that. That's how the whole song starts. So there's no like introductory like slow part before the drum comes in. It's just the beats throughout the whole song. Which here we were trying to make it a little more arty or something, but essentially that just as a straight folk song or pop song, it works just fine without all that nuance. Yeah, that drum fill, that was a lame duck period drum fill.
You had a lot of time to figure it out.
A lot of time.
I think when I slapped the title on the lyric, I didn't think it had anything to do with the lyrics at all. But now that I think about it, it does have some thematic significance, just because the exoskeleton or the molt is this hard outer covering that helps support and protect the cicada. And then when it grows into an adult, it sheds that skin or shell, becomes adult. And then in a lot of ways, this song is about leaving something behind, right? That, but it's more of like a tragic spin on it, because this relationship never really worked out, didn't really come into being. So it's about the singer just facing this crushing reality that he's got to leave all this behind.
I always the line that I don't need to ever figure it out, but it always makes me think, like the makeshift ties and modern pleats. Like, is the makeshift ties, is it like ties ties that bind, or is it an actual tie? Like,
I was probably thinking about like my Chess King outfit. Like I had this like thin tie and like these pleated pants that I would like wear to the high school band dance or whatever.
and tying voices and then makeshift ties. Like it's both, it's like tying voices, people talking to each other, like making connections. And then the reference to the clothes you're wearing, the makeshift ties and modern pleats, like a costume almost.
Yeah. Costume, that makes a lot of sense to me. And then this verse about drinking, that's just me recalling my binge drinking days. Like you try to drink it all away, all your fears and anxieties away. A lot of showing off to other people. But that's Locusts in October. I mean, that's where it all comes from, the inside story. Dave, what are your thoughts? I mean, you're on the outside looking in on all this. I'm just curious.
Well, two thoughts. One, maybe we'll finally get sued. It'll help our podcast dramatically. We might double our listenership. And
I'm waiting to get like really rich or get sued and lose everything. One or the other.
It's all good, right? There's no downside. And the other is just an actual sense of loss because I was off doing my own thing. I should have been maybe hanging around and recording with you guys, but we're here now, so we're doing this, and that's good.
Well,
but those are my two thoughts.
I was commuting to Westchester, so that's why Jim and I had a lot of time to right. keep the music going. But yeah, we missed you. Like we were. It would have been nice if you were around.
Yeah. We record it. Put a guitar solo in the middle.
Sure.
Absolutely. Or on the outro.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be perfect.
Like some screaming strat.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be cool. We could do that.
I found some liner notes. I think it was for Joe 2. Maybe it was Joe 3, where you were thanking Thom Williams for the use of his guitar. And I'm like, what guitar are you talking about? Did you borrow one of his guitars?
That may have been for Joe 3, but yeah, he loaned us. I think it was because when he listened to Joe 2, there's some, there's a parts that I was attempting to play like lead guitar. I didn't have a electric guitar. I just had my borrowed. I didn't have any guitars. They were all borrowed classical guitar, and I was trying to play lead with a classical guitar, and I knew nothing about how to play lead on. So I just like find notes, and I don't know. He was intrigued by that, and he says, "I'm going to give you a guitar." So he loaned me one of his guitars when that first time we went out there, and I guess I returned it eventually, but I kept it for a while.
What kind of guitar was it? Do you remember?
It was. I didn't know guitar. I assume it was it was a Strat. But it was, unlike I did have electric guitar. It was some awful guitar that I had from when I was littler, and it never tuned right. It was good for punk. It was good for punk songs. That's kind of partly what inspired the punk songs, because the guitar couldn't play anything else. But then Mr. Williams, I still call him Mr. Williams, gave us his loaned us that guitar. We borrowed amps, we borrowed guitars. And that was used on Joe 3. Not much. But I think it wasn't used on Joe 2. It was just on Joe 3. I think the Sphinx was recorded with Tom's guitar.
Yeah, that's cool. But, he was so generous that way with giving equipment, loaning equipment, and giving all that feedback. I mean, that was really treasured, because just getting anybody to listen to our music at all was a struggle. And like Jim said, he wrote all these notes on the index cards, and it was we poured over those notes. I mean, we thought about them a lot.
Yeah, some of those comments were so funny. Like he at one point he says his note is Jim is Abraham Lincoln, too honest.
I think he meant you.
I think he
right?
did.
Yeah.
My attempt at
Yeah, and then he went and sold your song to Lionel Richie.
But the money bags, yeah, and he drew the money bags next to Locusts in October.
Well, if Lionel Richie's listening, you're invited to the sequel to this podcast, and we would love to hear your side of the story.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you didn't know, it's okay. It's not a problem. But we definitely want to hear from you, or Brian Eno, if you know something about it.
Really, anybody.
If you feel like suing us, go ahead. It's a great story.
Makeshift ties and modern pleats. Something about the way you ran so free. Shifting into upper gear. Sorrows filled with echo tears.
Once again, we wanted to thank Jim Morris for joining us on this podcast, and you heard some of his incidental music there earlier in the show.
So glad we got to be friends.
And a little snippet from Dave's guitar work as well.
Good luck, stop back and see me sometime. But you know it all had to end.
And on our outro music, we have a cover of Locusts in October that Jim recorded himself with a little bit of a swing rhythm to it.
Showing off to other fools, rows and rows of broken rules, and tomorrow I will feel the pain.
We hope you enjoyed the show. We're always happy to hear your feedback.
Longing for another chance, daydreams of your absent glance, and you'd say goodbye, good luck, stop back and see me sometime. So glad we got to be friends.
Send us a note at padularasa@gmail.com.
Goodbye, good luck, stop back and see me sometime. But you know it all had to.
We hope you become a subscriber to the podcast.
Goodbye, good luck, stop back and see me sometime. Goodbye, good luck, stop back and see me sometime. Goodbye, good luck. Goodbye, good luck. Goodbye, good luck. But you know it all had to end.
Thanks always for listening. Be well, and we'll see you next time.